Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Tzveta Baliyska, and I'm joining you from Bulgaria. Some of you might know me as the organizer and host of the first International Online Playback Theatre Conference in 2020, and later the European Playback Theatre Gathering in Sofia in 2022. This year, the next European gathering will take place from 2nd to 5th October in Salamanca, Spain, as part of the official 50 years celebrations. Don't wait too long to register, it promises to be beautiful. I'm also part of the board of the directors of Center for Playback Theatre, and I have the great honor of coordinating the global celebration of 50 years of playback theatre. As part of this milestone year, the Center for Playback Theatre is organizing a year-long international celebrations, including a series of live interviews like this one with founders and pioneers in playback theatre, online peer supervisions with trainers and practitioners from all around the world, a global invitation to all playback companies to create performances in their own countries on the theme Stories That Shaped Us. In honor of the 50th anniversary, you can register your company now. Listening hour also is part of our celebrations. It's interesting to say that listening hour have its fifth birthday, and Playback Theatre have its 50. And of course, our global Playback Theatre birthday party is on November 10th, the month of the very first Playback Theatre rehearsal in 1975, an online celebration for everyone in the playback world to gather and honor our shared journey. All events mentioned are open for registration. You can find information in our site, playbackcenter.org, and all events are in the Facebook, and the registration links are in the name of Center for Playback Theatre in Facebook and in Instagram. Today, we are deeply honored to speak with Jo Salas, who has shaped playback theatre in more ways than words can tell, not only as a co-founder, but also as a writer, performer, educator, and artistic leader for over 40 years. But before I invite Jo, I'd like also to acknowledge the teams behind this event. The board of Center for Playback Theatre, Beata Shomuji, Igor Lubitov, Radhika Jain, Sikan Chung, Deborah Scott, Damilola Potieri, Solinda Cash, Sheila Donio, Mina Mo, and myself, and our partners from International Playback Theatre Network, IPTN, Andrea Sandoval, Emily Smith, Roberta Roberto, Ferran Luengo, Sheree Hali, Hani Au Rustum. And some technical notes. This session is being recorded and will be published online. By attending, you are giving your consent for this. It was also stated in the registration form. Our technical support today is provided by Maria Matrachiska and Stefka Dimitrova from Bulgaria and Damilola Putieri from Africa. I thank them personally for supporting the event. And now, with great respect and joy, we open our first generation series with Jo Salas. Welcome, Jo.
There we go.
Aha. Oh, perfect.
Yes.
Hello,
Hello,
hello.
Stefan.
Hello, Jo. It's an honor to welcome you here, and I'm so happy that you're here with us. I would like us to begin with a bit of a context. Playback theater started in the USA in the mid-70s. What else was going on then culturally, politically? What was the social and artistic atmosphere that allowed playback theater to be born and take root at that moment of history?
Yeah, sure. And before I say something about that, I'd just like to say hello to everyone who's here. And it's really just very touching to see these names appearing in the chat. Many of them are familiar, some of them are not, but it just reminds me that this really has been the most wonderful thing about being in this growing movement over time is the number of dear people that who are now part of my life. whether I see them once every 3 years or only once ever, or I see them more often, it's yeah, a great joy and privilege to know these people from all over the world. So thank you for being here, and yeah, it means a lot to me. So to come back to your questions, Sveta, um, yeah, I think there are a couple of people who are with us today who maybe remember that era, but many of you I know are much younger, and it seems like ancient history. Um, so I'll try to kind of describe a little bit what it was like. So playback started in 1975, and it was it was the upheavals of the 60s was still very much going
Mm,
on. So the civil rights movement, um, the women's movement, the end protesting the Vietnam War, which I think officially came to an end that
mm,
year. Um, People probably remember the hippie era. Um, we were right in the middle of that, where people were the way they looked, the way they lived, the way they spoke was radically different from their parents' generation, and we were part of that. Um, so it's hard to sum in briefly, but it was a world where it felt like everything was changing. Everything was changing, and it was an idealistic world. It was a
mm,
world where we felt we felt the strength of our youth and our
mm,
vision, and we felt that we could change things for the better. I mean, I'm generalizing, but I think that was a very strong mood in the US. Um, so the sense that we were changing history, we were changing the way we lived and dressed and ate and so on. A lot of people were going back to the land, growing their
mm,
own food, living in communes. Um, so it was very much both political and social. And of course, that means very, very personal as well. Um, and in the arts at that time, similarly, a tremendous feeling of innovation, excitement, new forms, both in theatre, in dance, in music. Um, a lot of new kinds of artistic expression kind of took root during that time. And we were
mm,
particularly aware of the experimental theatre movement, um, the sort of there was a lot of action in New York City at that time. We were living not in New York City, but a couple of hours away. And we felt sort of on the periphery of that. We were not one of those famous New York City groups, but we felt that we were part of that wave of brand new approaches to theatre. No one had ever done this before. And people, the different groups that were around at that time, they all had their different visions and their different approaches, and we had ours, but they were all radically new from what had
mm,
happened before. So the idea of playback was born during that time. It was actually, I think, 1974 when Jonathan first had that vision that he's written about of real people's stories enacted on the spot by other real people. And that was it. That was the sort of vision. And he actually did have, he'll tell you about this more than I mean, he can say more about it when it's his turn, but he had a visual image of people sitting together, listening, and then creating theatre on the spot. And that has remained the heart of it. That
Mm,
playback theatre actors are citizen actors. They're not Broadway actors. They're not Shakespearean actors. Um, they're ordinary people who can listen to other ordinary people and bring their artistic expressivity to those stories. And it did have, I mean, we did not have a sort of overtly um, political intent at that time, but we were very aware that there was something revolutionary about
mm,
saying the real stories of real people are worthy of art. We don't need, we're not interested in the stories of Hollywood. We're not about um, myths and legends and fiction. We're
mm,
interested in you, what's happened to you, how you feel about it, what it means in the world. And that's what we're going to enact. That's what we're going to devote ourselves to. And that's a radical thing to say, that ordinary people's stories really matter. They matter. They deserve to be memorialized and honored in the form of theatre. And from the beginning, we did use playback in kind of social context, not for public audiences, but also for marginalized groups or groups that were struggling or disadvantaged in some way. That was always part of the vision from the beginning. And of course, that's grown and developed over the years. So I don't
yeah.
know if that kind of summons that image at all. You can um, look at movies or artwork from that era, but when I look back at that, my what I remember is just all these young people, and we were young, believe it or not, we were very young, um, feeling that we could do anything. And
Mm,
we were trying out anything. We were trying out anything we thought of.
mm,
Some of the ideas were good, some of them were not good, but we were trying them all out. And of course, this had um, very much a sort of personal dimension to it as well. Um, Jonathan and I we'd come back to the US from England, where we had lived for a year and a half after we got married. We came back with our baby, Hannah, who's now a playbacker. Um, and I was new to the United States. I was an immigrant. I grew up in New Zealand. We had both come from doing volunteer service
mm,
abroad. Jonathan was in the Peace Corps. I was in the New Zealand equivalent of the Peace Corps, called volunteer service abroad. And that had really shaped us as well, both of us in different ways, living in developing countries and doing very humble work, getting to know people who are deeply culturally different from us,
mm.
um, learning how much we didn't know. It was very formative for us. And so all of that personal history sort of feeding into this moment of starting playback.
Yeah, in those early years, most performances, as we have heard and from the books we have read, used story form. And
Mhm.
was it because there were only a few forms at the time, or do you think the story form should remain central? Because in many companies, there's a companies that use only short forms, for example. And how have playback forms evolved over time, in your opinion? We know that you created the famous narrative V, and once there was as a closure and the closing collage. So, how do you see this topic during the years?
Yeah, so it's true that in the beginning we had only the story form, what people in Asia sometimes call free form.
Mm,
Um, and fluid sculptures and pairs. During those first couple of years, we had many, many, many ideas of different forms, and we tried them for a few months and then decided somehow didn't continue with them. And then we started learning new forms from like chorus came from a group in Australia. So we learned about that, and we so that became part of the vocabulary of playback theatre. But story, we just called it stories. It is the heart of playback theatre. It is the heart. We talk about the heart of the story. The story is the heart of playback theatre. So if you're only doing short forms, it's sort of like only eating snacks or only having hors d'oeuvre and you never have a whole meal. So I think what's happened is that people stopped trying to do full stories where you have a teller in the chair, there's an interview, and then the actors create a little scene that's coherent and built around the meanings of the story. I think what's happened is that people have found how difficult it is to do that well. It's very difficult to do well, right?
Right.
Because it requires deep listening. You have to listen with total attention and total humility and take into yourself what the meanings, plural, are for the teller. And then, without discussing it, you have to create a coherent artistic form that will embody the meanings that you've heard from the teller. So, who can do this? I mean, people who work together a long time, they develop a kind of ability to listen and then to work with each other. And what they have that they share is a sense of story. That's what I call it, a sense of story, a sense of form, which allows them to structure the story in a way that makes sense to someone who's watching, not only the teller, but the audience. So it's true that that's much harder to do than short forms or long forms that are highly structured and don't involve interaction. But to me, theatre is interaction. And I admit that I find it sad that the story form has been abandoned by some people, certainly not everyone. I hope that's not how it's always going to be. I hope people come back and try it again. So the reason that we the reason that we used it in the beginning is because that is what playback theatre is. The short forms are a warm-up to that. Okay, so
Of course, of
and the
course.
form so of course the forms have continued to develop. Many people still use fluid sculptures and pairs. They're so basic and not difficult to do, but there are many other forms that have been developed and then shared. In my I've been working with Hudson River Playback Theatre for 35 years. This year
Yeah.
is our 35th anniversary with much the same people, actually. It hasn't changed a lot.
Wow. Wow.
We've had some people have come and gone, but it's mostly the same people. Um, and there are a couple of forms that we developed that a lot of other people have picked up. And one is the narrative V, which we consider a narrative short form. It's a short form, but you can tell a story. And another is the closing collage, where actors, towards the end of the performance, actors reflect on the untold parts of the stories.
Mm.
So they're not highlighting things that happened, they're highlighting voices and issues and people, characters that were not center stage in the stories. So again, that's very difficult to do. It's not easy to do well. I've 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 seen yeah, I've seen it not work, let me just say.
Yeah, because playback theater is, as Jonathan say, easy to learn, hard to master. We need to
Yeah.
train, we need to go to trainings, no matter how many years we practice. And that I wanted to ask you exactly about Hudson River and its 35 years anniversary. This is really, really a long time. And you had a lot of anti-bullying schoolwork and other major activities. You've been performing playback shows about climate change since 1909. And what was the impulse behind that? And how do you see the role of playback in response to all the crises, but also if you can share the secret, if there is one of this core of people that stayed together for such a long time?
Um, yeah, I mean, I feel extremely fortunate with the people who've been drawn to Hudson River Playback Theatre. I mean, they haven't all been there for 35 years. One person has. Um,
What's the name of the person?
Matteo Undici has been there since the beginning. He was Hudson River Playback began as a staff group at an institution for children with severe emotional disturbance. And I was doing music and drama therapy there, and I trained some of the staff to do playback, and then we did performances for the kids and therapy groups for the kids. And Matteo was a very young um, student who worked there during the summers at that time. And then after a couple of years, we kind of emancipated ourselves from this institution and found our new name and found other people and so on. And Matteo has stayed with it. Sarah Urich is someone else who's been there from almost the very beginning. And so we're a small group now. We've lost some people, but we're very together. We've realized at a certain point that we're not an organization, we're an organism, and which makes us actually very flexible. We can adapt to the conditions that we're in. If there's if there's work for us, that's great. If there isn't work for us, that's fine. Um, and I think, I mean, you could ask the other people in the group. Sometimes I think most of all, what's allowed us to stay together is, I'd say two things. One is a culture of appreciation
Mm,
within our group.
mm,
We feel appreciative of each other and we express it. So it's a tremendously mutually supportive group. And the other is just the joy of creating art, creating playback together. So there's kind of a exhilaration, you know, when we've done a performance, um, to feel that we've created this together, and it's just a satisfaction. You feel very alive um, in those moments. So it's a bit addictive.
yes, it is. I
Yeah.
confirm. And maybe almost all
Right,
of the audience now
right.
will
And
confirm
in
that.
fact, I mean, you know, there are many groups that have been going 15, 20, 25, 30 years. And I hope that somebody researches that someday. What is it about doing playback together that keeps people together? So it's
Mm,
certainly not just our group. It's a phenomenon. You know, why do people keep coming week after week, year after year? Um,
yeah.
it's an interesting thing to explore.
Mm,
And you asked about these projects that we've done. Um, we we in 1999 we were asked to do playback theatre to address school bullying. We were
mm,
asked by a high school principal, and we spent 6 months studying bullying and getting
mm,
input from her and other educators. And then we designed a program and had to kind of refine it. But since then, we've done hundreds and hundreds of performances with school kids throughout all levels.
mm,
And it's a very effective way. And the emphasis is on empowering the bystanders to stand up and do something. So very typically in the beginning of a show, we ask kids, how do they feel when they witness somebody else
mm,
being bullied? And they, almost without exception, they say they feel bad, they don't know what to do. And by the end, an hour later, they do know what to do. And they've practiced it. And they've said, yes, I want to try this next time I see something. So it's very powerful. Um, we've trained a number of other companies to do this work. Um, and, my hope is that many kids around the world are being supported and facilitated and empowered by this kind of intervention.
I think in your books there are written about it. So if anyone
Um,
wants to know more, there's a lot of this subject in your
yeah,
books.
I haven't let's see. I think I've written, there's an article about it on my blog, Playback Theatre Reflects, that was excerpted from a long chapter that I wrote in a 2-volume book called what is it called? Acting Together. It's about using playback for social political change. And I wrote a long chapter for that included description of this program. That chapter is now reprinted in the book that Jonathan and I published a couple of years ago called Personal Stories in Public Spaces.
Really
So,
good book. Really good book.
so that gathers together a lot of earlier published work and then some recent pieces that we wrote for this book. So yeah, I haven't written a book specifically about no more bullying, but I have written about it in
Mm.
articles and they're accessible.
You have
You-
written something like a Bible. It's improvising real life. It's really important book. It was the first book I personally read. Maybe for some other of our listeners, you can write in the chat if also for you this was the first book, a really special book. But you have written many more. What the writing about playback? What role played in your playback theater journey? And what you discovered through writing, and you also write other books not only about playback, you're just a writer, but still what writing hadn't known just from performing.
yeah, I've always been a writer, and I mean, as a teenager, that was important in my life, and so as soon as we started doing playback, it seemed so remarkable that I started just, handwriting accounts of what we were doing. Um, we there was one time when we fairly early on when we were scheduled to do a performance with this is with the original company, scheduled to do a performance in a particular venue a couple of hours away from here. And we got there and they had something else going on. There'd been a confusion. Um, we had nowhere to perform. So we were with all our stuff and our team and our supporters. And so we said, we're ready to do a performance. Let's find somewhere to do a performance. And we found this orphanage where there were little kids And we just knocked on the door and we said, we're a theatre company, would you like us to do a show for your kids? And we did. And these kids were, as has happened so many times, as soon as you say to an audience, we're here to listen to your stories, I have a
Wow.
story. So these little kids tucked away in this orphanage far in the middle of nowhere, they told their stories. So I wrote about that as soon as we came back because it just seemed remarkable. And then a few years later, well, quite a few years later, we were doing more and more training. And there was one time after we'd had a group of people, we did a workshop. I can't remember what the workshop was. And then everyone left and went home. And I thought, they need to take something with them. They need to have some of what this experience was, some of what the teaching was in written form, so that they
Yeah.
can go back and refer to it and practice and show others. So that was the spirit in which I wrote Improvising Real Life. And it really was, and I wanted it to be a companion. I wanted it to be a friendly voice that people could open up and read and remember something that they'd learned or discover something that they needed to discover.
Mm.
So it's been, I've been happy to hear from people that it's been like that for them, that they find it very accessible and supportive of their work. It's been revised a couple of times. We did a 20th anniversary
Wow.
edition. Not much change. There were some changes, mostly in one chapter, and then I wrote an afterword, just about things that developments in playback since then. And yes, I've written other books about playback, and then a few things that have nothing to do with playback, just in the realm of literature.
Yeah, and you are also part of founding International Playback Theatre Network and served as its first vice president. And also, you are author of the logo. This is not the logo, but this is the logo of the 50th anniversary. But these people are drawn by you, and these are part of the first. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the logo of the original company that you gave to IPTN later also. And as a person who is serving in CPT board, I'm interested in what was the original version and what role do you see for international connections today and to organization international we have now.
Okay. Yes, you're right, about the logo, that I created it I don't know when exactly, somewhere early on. In the beginning, we didn't have a consistent logo. I did all the graphics and all the publicity, all the, press releases and so on. And I would just create an image to go with a poster or something. We didn't really know about the whole idea of branding, which I'm still not so enthusiastic about, but I know it's necessary. um, so yeah, the idea of the logo, that the image, which is these dancing figures connected, probably
Mhm.
most people can remember what that looks like. So it's those four figures, but they're not separate. They're like touching each other's hands. And that was meant to just symbolize our joyful creativity and our connection. That's what those figures were. And then above them, there was a bird. And the
Yeah,
bird was very important. The bird was kind of I don't know, transpersonal, spiritual, magic element of playback. And then the logo also said Playback Theatre. So in 1990, the original company was coming to an end. We had decided that we were going to retire, mostly because there was a tremendous demand for Jonathan to travel and teach at that point, not just around in the US, but travel internationally. And it was too difficult for him to run the company and travel as well. And looking back, it's amazing, but we never really considered continuing without him. That's my memory. We didn't consider that. So that surprises me now because that could have been a choice. Um, so in 1990, and again, I think this was originally his initiative, but we felt by now there was playback going on in, I believe, about 15 countries. And we felt that it was necessary to have a way for people to connect, know about each other, know that your little group in Cleveland, Ohio was connected to people all around the world. It's very, it's exciting to know that, right? And affirming to know that. So that was the basic thrust of the IPTN was to have ways for people doing playback around the world to connect. And the main ways were through the newsletter. We had a newsletter, which more recently has become the IPTN Journal. It was called Interplay to start with. And it was this was all pre-email, pre-internet, if you can imagine. It just went out on paper. We had a membership system so people could join, and that was all handled on paper only. There was no other way to do it. So people would join, and by joining, we had 3 levels of membership: company membership, practitioner level, and friend level. I don't even know if the same levels apply now. So if you were a practitioner or a company member and you had the right legally to use the logo and to use the name Playback Theatre. Otherwise, you did not. And we did one thing that we did in 1990, as you said, the original company handed over our, not only the logo, but our whole legal structure, our nonprofit status, and our board of directors, and so on. We handed that over to the IPTN. And at the urging of the board members at that point, for the first time, we got a service trademark for the logo. So it meant that we could control who used the logo. Now, in fact, that's really impractical. We've never really tried. We've never tried to enforce that. But we did for quite a number of years have this legal control over the logo and the name as well. So theoretically, if someone was doing something that we felt was not playback, we could say, you may not use the name playback. But in reality, I don't think that's ever been acted on.
No.
It's, yeah, it's there are other ways. So I guess that was another purpose of the IPTN, was to protect the idea of playback.
Yeah.
To protect the practices, the names, the concept of playback, so that it doesn't get diluted with other ideas. I mean, innovation is one thing. Innovation is great. But when people innovate without knowing what they're innovating from, then you get this kind of mishmash of different different practices, and it no longer has the integrity of playback theatre. So part of that impetus for the IPTN was that idea of protecting this particular form of theatre. And we felt that was everyone's job, not certainly not just
Mm,
the people who had been doing it for a while, but everyone who became a member, who had a company, who took it seriously, who studied. We all own it, and it's up to all of us to protect it. So I think that's still probably the basic purpose of IPTN is to help people be connected through the journal, through the conferences, and to have some way of, I'm not sure to what degree this is still part of the idea of the IPTN, but to um, have this public way of saying, you know, there is such a thing, there is a set of practices, there is a history, there is a philosophy, there is a code of ethics, and it's belongs to this particular um, tradition.
mm,
And by all means, experiment, but know what the basis is.
mm. Yeah, and I think the times before was really different, and then Center of Playback Theatre came, providing training and other things. And in my opinion, I'm advocate for that we need only one organization now. But I know that this is hard to organize, but I really believe that we need to gather strength and to have only one organization that will be really strong and that really support what you have said, because it resonates me a lot what you have said. And this is also my opinion of the international organization and their serving. But I think now that with the both organization, it's really also distracting for many people, don't know the difference between
Yeah,
them,
right,
don't know the purpose, because times are different. Yes, before with the paper it was different, but now only one Facebook group is stronger than anything. I mean, we are all there and we connect so easily. So now I think that the times are different, but it's a tough way to go
right,
with the
right.
organizations.
Yeah. I mean, over the years, there have been two or three attempts to address what you're talking about, you know, to
Yeah.
try and bring the two organizations together. Yeah. Um, and have ended up deciding it's not practical, but who knows? Maybe it is. Maybe it will become practical. And I agree. I think people are can be confused about what is the difference between these two major playback organizations. The center, well, it was started off as the School of Playback Theatre. That
Yeah.
started in 1993, so only a couple of years later. And we had been doing training long before that. And Jonathan felt it was time to have a more organized
Mm,
offering so that someone who wanted thorough training could find it. And yeah, and that sort of evolved and became the center, which is now an international organization um, coordinating the affiliated schools and so on. So
yeah.
yeah, I think organizationally there are certainly improvements, developments that could take place.
Yeah, I would definitely try. We'll see if it's possible. I would help if we all want to do it, because we are many people, and I don't mean only the boards, because this is something that concerns all of the playbackers. I'm really interested in your experience using playback theater to promote social justice. You have a lot of experience. And I would like to know, what role do you see for playback theater in times of rising fascism and polarization? And what is your position on the political nature of playback theater? It's a huge topic. We speak a lot about that, but I think we need more, because is it possible playback to be neutral? Is it truly possible not to be political?
I don't, this is such a tough thing to think about. And the question comes up a lot. we were just in the Philippines at the wonderful Asian Playback Theatre gathering, came home just a couple of days ago, and the question came up there, can we be neutral? Can we be political? And I think part of what I feel is that anyone who comes, let's say, to a public show and offers a story, we will listen to that person with total respect and kindness, no matter what their story is. I mean, almost no matter what their story is. I mean, I can imagine a very extreme story that we might feel we could not enact. That's, in my experience, has never happened. But theoretically, it could happen. So short of that, I believe in being respectful and accepting of any person, any story that is told in a performance. So someone might tell a story from a political perspective that you personally find problematic. I I feel like our job is still to respect what that person is bringing, to listen to them openly, to enact it artistically and respectfully. However, the next story will probably present a different view, and the dialogue will continue through the stories. So that's like a principle within a performance. Within the community, I mean, where we are right now in the United States, it's very scary. It's most people, I'm sure, are following the news, even if you're not in the United States. People are being abducted and not given due process, not given any legal platform in which to defend themselves. Hundreds have been deported to a sort of concentration camp in El Salvador. They're never coming back. They're supposedly members of a gang, but only 5 of them have, I mean, there was no proof, but 5 out of whatever, several hundred have been convicted of a crime. The rest, who knows? They may be completely innocent. But there's no chance for them to defend themselves in court. Students who are here legally on a student visa are being abducted and put into detention and threatened they will be deported because they've expressed a political opinion. So this is that we all feel that the US Constitution is being ignored, it's being destroyed. Many people are very, very distressed, very angry, very worried. So we do a public show in this context. What do we do? And my Hudson River Playback Theatre had a performance a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about this at length beforehand. Do we describe the show in neutral terms so that anyone can feel welcome, anyone can come, or do we describe it in a way that people who are very stirred up and upset about this will know that they can come and tell their story? And that's what we decided. So we already had a description that we'd sent to the press and so on, but we changed it for the later publicity. And we said something like, in these extraordinary and terrifying times, the title of the show was Planting Seeds. It's springtime, you know. In these extraordinary and terrifying times, what seeds are you planting seeds for? Resistance, a revolution, you know. So we made it clear that we were very sympathetic to those kind of stories. And in the beginning part of the show, people had so much to say about it. So that it was just an example of being, we decided not to be neutral. We decided to be explicitly inviting people who are resisting what's happening. And
Mm,
I don't know how you can do a neutral show in a context like this. Um,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's such a tricky question. Um, so coming back to just the larger question of social justice,
Mm,
that's always been a strong. So with the original company, it was a focus, but um, not explicitly, not as explicit as it has been for Hudson River Playback and for some other companies. As I said before, with the original company, we often did work for people whose stories were never heard. We did a whole project with incarcerated youth who had been convicted of murder and rape.
mm,
They were very hardcore. We did I think, 8-week series with them, and that four of us went there to do that. Very interesting, difficult experience. Um, but fruitful in the end. In the beginning, they were just trying to test us all the time, um, and then something changed. And you know what changed? Just remembering this, I I did music for most of those years with the original company, and I brought instruments to these sessions with the boys, and the instruments, of course, were all checked by the security and so on. And one of the instruments I had was a drum, a tongue drum, sort of had a top like that, and you would play the different tones. Can you imagine? This is made out of wood, and you hit these
wow.
different, and so it would make different, like almost like a tune. And
Uh-huh.
one of them said to me one time, "Could you lend that to me, and I'll make a copy of it in our woodwork class?" So I said, "Yes, I'll leave it with you, and you can give it back to me next time." So the next time we went, he had made another one, copying the design, and he gave me back the original one. And from then on, it was really different. They started telling very different kinds of stories, like vulnerable stories, stories about raising pigeons and missing family and so on. So it was that gesture of trust when I trusted him with the drum. It shifted things. Anyway, with Hudson River, we've done much more specifically social justice projects. So the No More Bullying is ultimately about social justice. It's really about good citizenship, which is standing up for what's right. So as an adult, we want to empower the kids to stand up and do something when they see someone being treated badly. And we make sure that they can really learn what they can do. But as an adult, we need to do that as well. You
Mm,
see something that's unfair, unjust, in my view at least, you know, there's a you need to do something, you need to say something.
yeah.
Um, so we also did a extensive project with immigrant groups, mostly Latin American immigrants who are there are many, many in our area. They're discriminated against. They have issues with language, isolation. They have issues with poverty. They're often exploited by their employers. Many of them are not documented, so they're vulnerable to being detained and deported. So we started doing these shows. We ended up doing more than 100 bilingual shows with groups of immigrants. And it was always very interesting to see some of the shows were just for immigrants. Some of them had immigrants and non-immigrants. And when it was just the immigrants, it was like they were giving testimony to each other. They were sort of saying, this is our story. This is what happened to us. This is why I came. This is how I came. This is how I crossed the border. And
Mm.
almost like kind of creating their mythology in the sense, not in the sense that it wasn't true, but like giving dignity to their stories and their experience. And then when we had non-immigrants there, they were teaching the non-immigrants what it was like. So they were very aware that there were non-immigrants there, and they knew that these people were hearing their stories for the first time. Often
Mm.
very, very, very moving. People would stand up and cry, the white people. I had no idea it was like this for you. Um, so yeah, just opening people's eyes to this reality. And when you hear somebody's story like that, you hear an immigrant talking about crossing the
Mm.
river with her baby on her head. The next time you read anti-immigrant propaganda, you're going to think, well, no, I heard
Mm.
Maria tell her story, and it wasn't like that, you know. So the individual story contradicts the
Mm.
stereotype story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And when your talk is so inspiring, and I'm thinking, what motivates you to do playback for such a long period of time with such a passion? And also, is there something you do not like about playback theater?
Um, well, I think um, yeah, that there is certainly there's a I mean, okay, I'm stumbling because it's difficult to answer both of those questions. Um, what keeps me going is the sense of the team, my team,
Mm,
that
yeah.
I have such pleasure and satisfaction working with. Um, and also and the satisfaction in part comes from doing these kinds of shows where we feel like we're engaging with something really important. Same with the climate change shows. I mean, this is a maybe the most pressing thing of our time. It's disaster facing all of us. And if we feel we can actually engage with that, it feels very worthwhile, very satisfying. Um, and I think all of the people in my group, as well as myself, we're all people who are concerned about social justice. We are aware of what's going on in the world. We follow the news. We are aware of our privilege. We are aware of the currents in society that are creating harm for people. And so it's natural for us to want to use our art to engage with that. Um,
Mm,
and when we can, it's so deeply satisfying that it motivates us to continue. I do a lot of teaching as well, and it's similar with that. So it's such a joy to engage with students and to feel like we're tackling these questions together. In this case, mostly questions about how you do playback and so on, but getting to know people from all over the world through teaching is another great satisfaction. Yeah. And what do I not like about playback? Playback is not my whole life. It couldn't be. I mean, I don't know if it is for anybody. Um, so I think I would say it's not that there are things I don't like about playback. It's that it's very important for me to be involved with other other things as well, including um, non-playback writing, including my family, um, including activism of different kinds. So um, I don't look for everything in playback.
Hmm. For me also, playback is a part of my work. I do a lot of other things,
Yeah,
but I think it's an important part, and playback gave me a lot to be better in the other jobs I do.
yeah. Oh yes, that's for sure. I mean, I can imagine. I think many people find that. I think
Mm,
that one thing that we all gain in playback is flexibility. You know, that we can adapt to a unexpected situation better than many people because we're used to that, you know.
so
We're
many.
used to
So from Margareta, we have a question. What is your wish for playback theater in the future? And this will be towards the end of our conversation. Maybe we will have this as an answer. Bear
it.
from Hungary asking, what does playback theater mean to you? I think in a way you answered. From Kenny Shiu from South Africa is a question, can playback theater be seen as a therapy or does it just have therapeutic elements in it? I think there's a lot written about this topic and many articles, and I have read personally a lot about it, that playback theater is not a therapy, but have a therapeutic effect. We have a question from Karin Gisler, which is also one of our speakers, and I'm glad to see most of them, of the speakers of the next interviews, being present here. So hello to all of you, and it will be so nice to I see you in this series. So Karen asks, what do you think about the current developments in the playback theater movements of splitting up and not wanting to interact anymore? The situation with Israel, Arabic countries, and Russian and Ukraine. I think this is a huge topic that we are all interested in. And she asks, how can we get together as a community?
Okay. So do you want me to respond
Yeah.
to some of those?
Yes.
Um, I won't remember them all, but I'll start with I'll start with what Karine asked. How do I feel about it? I feel heartbroken. Um, but just very, very sad. It's something I think about a lot, something that Jonathan and I talk about a lot. And I don't know what the solution is. Um, I mean, you know, the two situations, did she mention, or maybe you mentioned just now, Israel, Palestine, and Russia, Ukraine. Of course, they're different from each other,
Oh,
but there are some similarities. And yes, what do you do when the playback process isn't working, doesn't work because of immediate geopolitical tensions? I
yeah.
know this is something, you know, this question is partly what led Jonathan to work on this ethics course that's about to begin, to sort of, with other people, find some way to have an understanding of how can we go ahead when there is this reality that it's not emotionally possible to
Mm.
be same room as someone from the other side of the conflict. Um, I mean, yeah, it's we can't avoid it. It's a reality. I mean, I remember at the European conference in Amsterdam, was that 10 years ago?
It
Something
was
like that.
2014.
Yeah,
Yeah.
11 years ago. We already were seeing this kind of split. Some people having a very difficult time connecting or listening to people because of the political reality at the time. So I don't have a formula. I don't have a solution. I think that playback can always be useful within an affinity group. So Israelis can do playback with each other, Palestinians can do playback with each other, until the time comes that it's possible to listen to each other. And at the moment, it is not. I think that there has to be, I mean, this is more like my personal view. I think that there has to be an acknowledgement of the larger political reality and power imbalances. That seems essential to me. If you're going to use playback for dialogue, there has to be an acknowledgement of power differentials as a basis for dialogue. But if there was, then I think playback could be a powerful means of dialogue.
Yeah,
And a
but when
powerful,
people are not ready for dialogue, it's really hard, right?
if they're
There's
not
not much you can do.
right. So the current split, particularly, it's not, yeah, I mean, Israeli playbackers I know feel isolated. Um, I think some of that is based on um, misunderstanding that came out of the South Africa conference.
Mm,
It was a kind of myth that got propagated and repeated, and just wasn't true, but led to a lot of alienation, and that's very sad situation. I just hope we will find ways we'll grow beyond that. It's not comfortable to stay in that place.
yes. In a way, there are these moments that when we think that when we are playbackers, like we are superhumans or something, but the
Mm.
truth is that we are just humans and we have our feelings. And when we organized European Playback Theatre Gathering in Sofia, it was exactly the Ukrainian-Russian conflict, and we had many, many difficulties dealing with that. It was really, really hard because we had friends, personal friends from both sides, and amazing trainers, and it was really hard to manage all this. And I spoke with many people personally during this organization, and I just saw that we are just humans, and we are playbackers. When we are on the stage, maybe we listen differently, we feel, we accept differently, but when we are in our lives, we just need to be ready to listen. We cannot force that. I don't know what.
Right. We can't force it. Um, yeah. So my hope is that things will move and change for the better.
Yeah, it starts from a person in a way, right? It starts a lot of,
Um,
from the person, not only from the inside.
right. I mean, everyone has their own capacity to hold complexity and contradiction and pain. So we're not all the same in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. We have a few questions and they continue to pop up. We have a really long questions from Abby, and maybe if she is here, she can ask it live because it will be really hard for me to read it. How it is a big writing. So if Abby is here, Abby, can you ask your question directly now? You have a chance to
Uh,
speak directly to Jo.
Thank you. I'm outside and my internet is very not stable, so that's why I put it in my chat. But I'm really grateful and I'm yeah by being in the space, and I'm really thankful for that. This is Abhay from India.
Hello.
Okay, so you want me to find
You
the
should read
question?
it.
Okay. I think in a way, what Abby is asking is a lot about this conflicts and of the how can we listen more deeply, feel more fully, and connect more honestly. I think the question is quite related to what we are speaking now. And now I would give the word to people that are present here. If you want, you can ask Jo something directly now, live. This would be a good moment to connect and to ask or to share something. And meanwhile, I will see the new questions in the chat you arise. So maybe you can start directly to speak and
Hi,
yeah, your name, please.
I'm Bérangère from France.
Hello.
Hi, thank you. I'm really grateful for you doing what you're doing and really grateful to Jo. Thank you for be the genius who creates the Playback Theatre. I'm starting from zero because I'm training with Playback Theatre since 10 years. I've been trained by Ben Rivers. Don't know if you know him.
Yep,
And
I do.
you do, nice.
I do.
So
Yep.
I've done a couple of training with him, then playing since 10 years in a company, an hour drive from here. And I want now, since a performance where I was just crossed by so much love and joy to be this live instrument, I've decided to start from zero where I live. I'm living close to Avignon in France. So would you have like 3 advice for me? Like I'm able to manage the training now after 10 years. And I want to, start the company to be able after that probably to do performance in the area or on the national way. Would you have 3 advice for me starting these?
Well, good to hear about your background and your experience. If you're starting a company, it's helpful to start with some kind of vision of what you want the company to be, so that the people that you draw to you are as much as possible kind of the right people for you to be working with. So to think about that, you may already have done that, but what is your vision for this company?
Yeah,
and then you
thank you.
invite people to share that vision. That's one suggestion, and of course the vision probably will evolve once you start, and other people will share. It will become influenced by the other people who are there. But I see new companies sometimes collapse when they have very different visions about what they want it to be, like how professional you want to be, what kind of audiences you want to perform for, and so on. Another advice that I can offer is to go slow, to go very slow. It can take, especially if you're teaching people from scratch, they haven't done playback before, you probably won't be ready as a company to perform for at least a year, probably more. So just to be aware that it's a long, slow learning curve, and it's much better to become strong as a group and strong in your skills before you offer yourself to the community.
Mm.
And I think my third suggestion would be enjoy yourselves, have fun together, eat together, play games. Yeah, have joy.
Thank you very much. I've
Yeah,
got last one question about the vision, because I'm already, I called a few comedians around me that I want to work with. So we're going to be probably 4 or 5 to start the group and the company. Would you recommend to, because I'm the one to impulse or to start the things, do you think I'm working on my vision, or I'm working about the vision with this small group to start?
Yeah, if you already have several people that you know you want to work with, then it would make sense to come up with a collective vision.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm really honored to listen to you today, and thank you for the advices.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
In
Take care.
chat, Rosie Waters say, I love that Jo said when I took one of her classes a long time ago, playback is never perfect. I have kept that in my heart for a long time, she said. And then Karen said that Toronto talks about good enough playback. And playback is...
I think that was my phrase, that was part of the essay that I wrote about what is good playback theatre. I use the term good enough. I mean that, yeah, it's a useful essay if people want to read that. That's, I think, also in personal stories in public spaces.
This essay is really important for newcomers. If there are people that are new to playback here, we definitely recommend this essay. It's amazing. It's really working for people that don't know anything about playback. And also, I see here a talk about someone says, let's talk about Szkoła Playback Theatre says, let's talk about playback, but not about politics. And there's an answer. Playback is about personal stories and the social forces that frame them. Playback is political. I also think that we cannot separate the personal story from the context. I cannot imagine how we can do that, because we tell a story in the context. We cannot divide them. I don't know what you think, Jo, about that.
You know, there's this famous slogan here from the women's movement from the 70s, the personal is political, meaning what happens in women's lives, you know, in the kitchen or looking after children, that's political. It has a political meaning, what happens in an individual person's life. The personal is political. And I started thinking much late, you know, relative in recent years, that you can reverse that. You can say the political is personal. And by that, I was particularly thinking of how what happens on the explicitly political level, what's happening in the power structure in your government or in the world, it impacts you. It becomes part of your story. If you care deeply about, you know, as you said before, the rise of fascism, or you care deeply about structural racism, it is part of your story, and you can tell it belongs in playback. So, yeah, there are people who do playback without any explicit reference to the political social reality. And there are some countries where it's simply not safe to do anything else. And I want to acknowledge that. There are countries where the government is listening, and they will target you if you talk about political matters in any way. So people have to confine themselves to very personal stories, you know, relationships, family things, you know, birthday party, and it's still playback. It's still worth it, and it's still important for people to be heard and accepted and see their stories. And sometimes people can obliquely, you know, indirectly refer to a political reality. Larry Ng, who's a playbacker from Hong Kong who now lives in Canada, he wrote a very interesting article about using metaphor to tell stories that are not safe to tell publicly. That's on my blog, Playback Theatre Reflects. So, I mean, that's a technique that you can learn. But sometimes it's possible to speak out, sometimes it's not, and we have to accept when it's not, and hopefully things can change. Yeah, I mean, just thinking about our Hudson River shows, plenty of the stories we do, they don't have any explicit or obvious political dimension at all. But we're still aware that we're doing this within a certain kind of social context. It's always there, and sometimes we can bring that into the enactment in some way. It's interesting that everywhere people are grappling with these questions. I hear that from so many people in the courses that I teach, and in the Philippines, as I said. It seems to be very prominent in people's minds right now. What is playback's role in relation to political, social reality? And there are not easy answers, but I think it's great that people are articulating those questions and exploring. We will continue to discover.
Another question we have from Stefka Dimitrova. Stefka is my colleague. We were together in Cuba, and while you were speaking now, I recall so many stories from Cuba. We were an amazing delegation from Cubans and people around the world. Maybe there are people here from this delegation. Hi guys, if you're here, it was a really amazing experience, and we had 8 performances, and we listened stories from many different people living there. And then there I really realized that you cannot divide political and personal, because the situation they live in, it's impacting their life so much that it's impossible. Maybe in the societies that live more easy, let's say, we cannot see that much. It's not that visible, but this Cuban experience was amazing. And now we have a project, and soon we will put more info about it. We hope we can help some Cubans to go to European Playback Theatre Gathering in Spain, which for them it's almost impossible. So I hope we can help them go there, because they're amazing, and I really want to support the society, not only me. There are a lot of people that love Cuban playback people. And Stefka is asking, speaking about good playback, can you summarize what is not just bad playback theater, but even shouldn't be called playback theater? Maybe an example, if you have seen such a group or performance, do you have seen something that you think, oh no, this should not be called playback theater, but hasn't been called?
Well, anything that doesn't have the basic values of listening and translating into artistic form. I mean, that's the heart of what the process is. I mean, if it's not doing that, then I don't see how you could call it playback theatre. Yeah, I haven't. I mean, I've seen performances that look like playback theatre, but they're missing there are fundamental things that they haven't learned. So it's still playback. It's just not fulfilling itself. There are things about the technique, including particularly the social interaction. So in that essay that I refer to, What is Good Playback Theatre, I talk about this. On the one hand, it's artistic theatre. We need theatre skills. We need to use our voices, our faces, our movement, and so on. On the other hand, we have to be sophisticated in terms of social interaction with the audience, because we cannot do a playback theatre show without the spontaneous participation of the audience. And when I say spontaneous, I mean that we've created an atmosphere where they can contact their authentic stories and choose the right time to offer them. That's what I mean by spontaneous. So if we don't know how to do that, if we don't have those skills, it might look like playback, but it won't have the heart of playback. It won't be about deep listening, and it won't be about building a sort of tapestry of stories that are meaningfully interwoven.
We have a second question about the deep listening. What would you suggest? What can we do to listen deeper? To go to trainings, maybe? Go to more trainings?
Well, training usually helps, but deep listening is something you can do anywhere you're with another human being. You can choose to really pay attention to what they're saying. You can choose to open your whole body, not just your ears, but your whole body to what they're saying, and observe like what you're hearing. There's the words, but there's also the tone of voice, there's the breath, and there's your sense of what this means to this person. They might be telling you about a disappointing restaurant experience, but you might be hearing other kind of resonances. What they're telling you is what we call the face of the story, and that's fine, that's enough. But if you really open yourself, you can just feel the richness of what that is that they're telling you. So yeah, practice with your family. They'll be delighted.
Yeah.
I think one of the powers of playback is that doesn't happen very often. That in ordinary life, we do not listen to each other deeply because we're always so distracted. We're so busy. Our phones are there. We're rushing off to something. We listen maybe 30 or 40% to what someone else is saying, and or less. And I think one of the reasons that people love playback theatre is because you can get really listened to.
Yeah.
Company members have the luckiest people, because they have that experience every time they rehearse. They can have that experience of being deeply heard and knowing that they're deeply heard. And people who come to playback shows and tell a story, they know that if they sit in the teller's chair, the conductor, the actors, the musician, the audience is going to hear them fully without distraction. And it's such a healing experience. Somebody asked about therapeutic effects. It's deeply therapeutic, not therapy, but deeply therapeutic to be deeply heard. And we don't have to confine that to playback, but that is what people find when they experience playback.
Yeah. Yes. I was exactly was about to point that we have a second question about the playback. Is it therapy? Is it just have a therapeutic effect, or can it be considered as a therapeutic tool?
So playback inherently has these therapeutic effects. It's not therapy. We're not, when we do a public show or something, we're not saying to the we're not saying to our community, come and have a therapy session with Playback Theatre. This is the greatest form of group therapy. No, that's not what we're doing. We're saying it's theatre, it's storytelling. However, being listened to is healing.
Yeah.
Having your story reflected so that you know people have understood it is healing. Seeing something new as you watch your story enacted, an insight, a discovery, a learning, that's healing. Learning that you're not the only person in the world who's had this experience, that maybe you felt ashamed about or isolated by, that's healing. So these are all healing effects, but it doesn't make it therapy any more than, you go to a concert and you have an uplifting, cathartic experience listening to the music. It doesn't mean that the orchestra was performing therapy. It means that you had a healing experience listening. However, I will say that therapists, somebody who's trained as a therapist, it's fine for that, like drama therapists particularly, or psychodramatists, can use playback as a form of therapy in a clinical setting with clinical goals. That's what we did at this institution for children where we started. And then it is a therapy, then it is a therapeutic modality, and you need to have the same knowledge and care that any other therapist would have. But if you're not a therapist, then it's not a good idea to use it as therapy.
There's an interesting question from Deb. Can Jo say something about the participant performance model? What is it, when it is done? Anything else about working in that context?
Okay. So this is a sort of term that I used in something that I wrote about thinking about, so we're used to thinking about performance model playback, right? Where you have an audience, you have a trained team of performers. And in contrast to a workshop model where there might be one leader or two leaders, and all the participants take turns telling stories and acting stories. So everyone becomes an actor. Then there's another kind of category that I'm calling participant performance, which is where a particular affinity group learns enough playback to be able to perform for each other. So they use a performance model. So there is a team and there's an audience, but everyone belongs to the same affinity group. And I'll give you a couple of examples in a minute. So a couple of things about that, because so one example is playback. There was a project in Kabul in Afghanistan with a group of people identified as victims of war, people who had endured tremendous suffering and loss for 30 years in wars in Afghanistan. And they learned enough playback to be able to do performances, not workshops, but performances for each other. They wouldn't have had enough skills to go and do a public performance where any topic might come up. That wasn't their goal. That wasn't what they were wanting to do. They really wanted to just serve the people who were other victims of war. They were all victims of war. So that meant the strength was that every conductor and performer shared the same experiences and traumas as people in the audience. So although their playback skills might have been limited, they deeply understood what the stories were about and were able to play them very successfully. I heard of another group in Japan, and I think this was a group that Aki, who's on this call, initiated, and it was mothers, maybe mothers at home, sorry, I'm vague about the details, but again, they were people who came together because of some very important thing they had in common. And they learnt enough playback to perform for each other. And yeah, I'm seeing Johnny Jablonka saying
Yeah.
Linda Struggle. Yeah, exactly. So that's another great example. Cancer patients. So initiated by a cancer patient and performed by cancer patients for other cancer patients. So I think there are a lot of examples of this. Not everyone has used that term, but I just found it useful to distinguish that from other kinds of performance where we might train for a very long time so that we can do performances in schools, we can do performances in organizations, for the general public, and so on. So if you're doing participant performance, all you need to do is be able to serve the people in that particular affinity group.
Yeah, really, really interesting. We are towards the end of our talk.
Yeah.
I know I don't want to end, but still we have some time frame. I want to open the microphone to someone who maybe ask something that we haven't mentioned yet, some topic that we haven't spoke about, something that you would like to ask Jo now. So this would be some of the last moments that you can ask her something that you think it is important to be said exactly now. So welcome.
Yes, actually, I have a question. Hi, can you hear me, right?
Yes,
Okay.
your name, please.
My name is Toqa, and I'm from Egypt. And I have a question regarding props. Actually, I have seen that question, and also it was asked by one of the Egyptian playbackers about the props, if there are different props that we use, because mostly we use chairs and cloth.
Hello, and thank you for your question. Different groups do it different ways. Some groups don't use cloth at all. They just prefer to be kind of clean and free of cloth. Some groups have other kinds of props like objects or abstract objects. I think probably the majority of playback groups do what you do and use just the chairs or boxes, if they use boxes, and fabric, pieces of fabric. So there's no rule about that. It's really what you like, what works for you.
Thank you. Another one? Is there another one? I have one last question, but I will wait until we see.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Hello, Jo. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello. I see that many of the groups kind of die out, especially in Central Europe. We're getting old. We didn't have new people coming. In some countries like Russia, it's blossoming, and in some others it also does. But my question is, Jo, how do you see the future, or what do we need to do to maintain it alive? Or does it just either maintain alive or it doesn't?
Oh, you mean playback in general?
Yeah, playback in general. Yeah. And great to see you here, Jo.
Nice to hear you. Well, it's groups do come and go. Not every group is destined to last for a long, long time. Some do, some don't. Some come to that natural end of their life. And I'm sure there are some that would like to keep going if they could recruit more people. From what I see and what I've been hearing about, playback is growing. I mean, there are new groups. I hear about new groups and new countries fairly often. So I haven't yet got the feeling that playback theatre as a movement is dying or even slowing down. And maybe it's, I don't know, particularly in countries in Africa or Asia, there's really a lot. I was just in this gathering in the Philippines and full of mostly fairly young people, super energetic and enthusiastic and wanting to do more. And that's the kind of feeling that I've been getting. I mean, I don't know how to do a worldwide survey, more people joining or more people leaving. I don't know. And I think there can be all kinds of factors why a group would end. And they're not necessarily negative reasons. I mean, there is a kind of life cycle, and when it's time to stop, it's time to stop, and something else will come up. So, Karine, I don't know I don't know if you should be concerned about that. I think it might be more alive than it looks, perhaps from where you are. But maybe the
I'm
focus is
very
shifting.
relieved.
Sorry?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for the question.
Before I ask my final question, a final moment, if someone wants to join now and say something or ask something briefly, or just something to share before we going towards. I see you, Margareta. Yeah.
Yes, I'm a little bit curious, but first of all, I want to thank you for a very nicely arranged and interesting interview. I'm very excited to see the following, what's coming next. But I'm interested to know if is the playback theater in the USA in any way included in the established educational system, or is it a free spirit outside the system? And also, you have a hope for it to become established if it's not already.
Yeah, it's certainly not established. And where are you, Margareta?
In Sweden.
In Sweden, okay. I mean, I suspect your educational system is way more enlightened than ours. So I don't know if playback will ever be incorporated into the education system, although that would be fantastic. I do know that a number of people over the years have had extensive long-term playback theatre projects in their schools. Some private schools, some public schools. I don't know for sure which of those are still going. I haven't heard anything in recent times, but I do know that has happened. There was a school in Washington, D.C., where actually the children of 2 or 3 of the presidents attended. It was a private school, private Quaker school, and they did. Tim Reagan, who taught there for a long time, did every kid in, I think, 7th grade, that's when they're about 12, 13, they did playback theatre for a year, every single kid in the school. And
Wow.
it sounds like it was wonderful, and they did performances. So there was an occasion where Barack and Michelle Obama watched playback at their kids' school because of that program. And we thought, oh, great, now he's going to, let's see him bring this into the government. No, that didn't happen. I think it's probably in the US likely to remain intermittent like that. That's from time to time, there'll be a playback person who's able to establish a program in a local school. I don't see it being adopted by any kind of institutional education system, unfortunately. But thanks for the question.
Thank you.
I'm sure most of us have hopes for that. In Bulgaria, we are thinking about that a lot and we do some small steps. I don't know if in our lifetime we will manage, but I'm sure that many people are thinking about that. And many people from audience come to us after performances say, this should be in schools, do something, this should be in schools. This comes really often, but it's really hard with the system. So yeah, we'll see. So my final question is what's next for you and for all of us as we grow older and tougher? And also, this is from the chat. What is your wish for playback theater in the future?
Well, referring to some of the questions that have come up, I do hope that playback in the future, or the playback community in the future, is able to bridge these divisions in a way that's positive and just for everybody. That we create connections and bridges in the context of justice. That's what I hope. What's next for me? Well, I've been doing playback all this time, and I've been teaching a long time. I've taught playback in 32 countries, and not counting conferences, that I've attended. And after this year, I'm not traveling anymore. So I'm not traveling to teach or to conferences. So that's a change for me. So I will continue to do playback in my own community and perhaps online, but not if I have to travel. Not going to do that. Did I answer the question? Was there
And
more?
maybe your wish for the future? You mentioned something, but yeah.
I did. I said I hope that our community finds ways to bring peace and justice to us as a community. I guess I hope that playback continues to evolve, find new developments, new effectiveness, while remaining very firmly rooted in the basic precepts and practices and philosophy that's always been there.
And I will say what's next for our celebration, and then we will invite you to say your final words. But many, many interesting things are coming 19th of May. All interviews are on the 19th, so it's easy to remember each 19th, but please check the time zone, of course, because speakers are from all around the world, so the time is different, but every time is 19th. So 19th of May, we'll have the honor to be with Jonathan Fox. 20th of May, we have a supervision with Emily Connellan and Sikan Chung. You can still enroll for that. 19th of June, we will be with Bev Hoskins from New Zealand. I'm really happy about that. And yeah.
Hosking, not Hoskins.
Only Hosking. Perfect. Bev Hosking from New Zealand. I'm really happy that we can have a talk with her. With 19th of July, we are with Kayo Munakata from Japan. I think I saw Kayo here. 19th of August, Aviva Apel Rosenthal from Israel will be with us. And then we continue each 19th with Päivi Rachmel from Finland, Karin Gisler presenting German-speaking countries, Ben Rivers, Farah Vardani, Solinda Kash presenting Arab-speaking countries, Leslie Palmer, Samson Setumo, Kathy Borowski from Africa, and of course, I will mention our birthday party. I hope you all be there and more people, 10th of November. And please join the Stories That Shaped Us. This is global performances from May to October that companies will do in their local, for their local communities, but under one topic, and celebrating 50 years of Playback Theatre. And we, as Center of Playback Theatre, will share all of these to online, so you will see pictures and stories from these performances all around the world. And also we have listening hour festival part of the series, and you can also be part of a listening hour if you want. You follow our socials, and of course you can always write to us. We will be happy to be with you. I'm Tzveta Baliyska, and I really want to thank all the CPT board that work really hard for all this year to happen, and our partners from International Playback Theatre Network, and also the support team of this particular interview, Demilola, Stefka Dimitrova, Maria Matarczyska. Thank you so much for supporting this event so we can enjoy this amazing speaker. Please, Jo, give us our last words.
Well, thank you, Tzveta, and thank you to your team and to the Center for Playback Theatre, and deep thanks to everyone who's here. I'm sorry I can't see everyone's face, but I feel you, and it's really, it feels good to be in this circle of people listening and sharing, and yeah, let's keep listening to stories and take care in this tough world that we're in. At least we're in it together. Yeah. It's great.
Okay, yes. Yes, this talk, yeah, will be online for people that ask. So it will be there.
It's always like a reunion, seeing familiar faces and seeing lovely new faces as well.
Yes.
Great.
So see you soon, I hope, all of you, at least online, and have a nice day or evening or night, whatever you are watching us. And thank you so much for being with us. Bye.
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 Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Obrigada.
Bye.
Gracias,
Bye-bye.
Obrigada, obrigada.
Bye.
She go say, I be lady, yo.
Auf Wiedersehen.
A woman, African woman, no go green. She go say,